Welcome back to the Digital Imaging channel. I'm Will, and today we're going to be talking about our Aperture card scanning process. Aperture cards are pieces of microfilm that contain in a piece of kind of card stock that's about 3 inches by 7 inches, kind of like this. And on the right side, if you're looking at it, is a hole or an aperture where that piece of microfilm goes. Typically, these are going to be 35mm images like engineering drawings or maybe images of open books. Occasionally, though, you can have 16mm images within that frame. You might have a couple different letter size or office size documents within that one frame, but that's basically what an aperture card is, a piece of microfilm within that card stock. Now, the process to scan your aperture cards, at least the way we do it, this is the general 10-step method to scan aperture cards. And the first step is, of course, receiving your materials. Without your materials, we can't do a scanning project. So you need to get them to us somehow. That can be either we go and get it. Maybe if you're in the kind of local area, we can drive out, pick it up, bring it back to our facility. Occasionally we fly somewhere and then rent a vehicle and drive it back that way. Or you might ship it to us if it's just too far to do any sort of ground shipping by our employees. You can send it to us that way. But the first step is receiving your aperture card collection to start the process. When we do receive your aperture cards, either by delivery, you ship it to us, or we bring it back to our facility after a pickup, the first thing we're gonna do is tag those transportation containers with barcodes that indicate the project number, client name, so your organization, the date we received it, and any other information that's pertinent to that project. So if you have a couple 100,000 aperture cards and you got them to us in maybe banker's boxes, we're not gonna be tagging the individual cards, we're going to be tagging the boxes that they came in. So maybe we have 50 boxes of aperture cards that we've tagged so that when it's inside our facility going through the process, we know where those aperture cards are at all times, where they've been checked out from, and who checked them out. And these containers will be tracked within our material tracking system, or what we call MTS, within our project application, which we call Unity. So within that material tracking system, we'll be able to tell where those boxes are at any time. After the containers have been tagged, we're not immediately going to go into scanning, so they need to be stored for a bit while we get the project set up. We create the process flow and do the milestone proof of concept process. So before we actually go into the bulk scanning, they need to be stored somewhere, and we're gonna store them in a secure storage area. So within our entire facility, which is secured, only accessible to BMI employees in the production area, even within that, there's a temperature controlled vault that is kind of its own little secure storage area within the facility. There's also some restricted storage areas. So depending on the project level, what type of records are on your aperture cards, it will be put in one of these areas until the cards are ready for scanning. Next up is creating the job order. So you were working with one of our sales reps, coming up with the project specifications, what you want done, what you want to accomplish. And there's a contract and a scope of work and everything on the sales side and admin side, but that has to be translated into an actual work order for our production team. So what our salesperson is going to do is turn that contract and scope of work into a production ready job order. And that's what we call our SOP process, which stands for scope of project. So our salesperson is going to go into our SOP application, which is within that Unity application, which I mentioned earlier. And so they're going to translate that contract into a job order for our production team. And it'll have various service lines related specifically to that project, such as the material classification level, the scanning specs, the delivery specs, indexing. Is it going to be hosted on our digital reel application or delivered on a hard drive, shipping information, any attachments such as the contract, a purchase order, things of that sort, special instructions. All of that is going to be created in this SOP, so that when it's submitted and approved, our production team can take that and then begin building the process flow. Once that job order is approved in SOP, we will start the Milestone 1 proof of concept process, where one of our project managers builds your unique process flow from scratch based on the specifications of your project. So as I said, the salesperson was translating the contract into a work order. Now the project manager is translating that work order into an actual process flow that will be used for your project to scan the cards. And we use a build, test, refine method for our milestone, which means we build the process flow, we test your project with a small batch of cards. Again, thinking we have, let's say, 100,000 Aperture cards for you, we may scan 50, 100, 200 or so, just a small batch. Once we built that process flow to test them and make sure everything's working, and then once we do that testing, we will work with you to get your approval that the milestone is accurate, you're getting what you want to get at the end of the project, and we have your thumbs up that we can now move forward with the bulk bulk of the scanning and the cards. Now the actual scanning process, so let's say the milestone's approved, we're going through and we're gonna do the remainder of the project. When we are scanning your cards, depending on which scanner we're gonna use, there would be a pre-scan phase. For our Meckel scanners, when we're scanning the entire card, basically like the physical card itself, not just the aperture where the microfilm is, there's a pre-scan at a different light setting so that we can capture the actual card for historical context. That pre-scan image will be used either on a traditional deliverable, let's say you get PDFs, you'll have that image of the actual card before the microfilm image, or if you're using our digital reel application, you'll be able to see that physical card in digital reel. After the pre-scan is the standard scanning, where instead of taking the special light image of the card as a whole, we're gonna be scanning the microfilm image, which has the actual record and data you're looking to access. So that will be scanned based on calibrations created during that milestone process and the specs of the project that you asked for. So we do the scanning. Once the images are captured on the scanners, then they're gonna be converted into that electronic image and processed in the next step. Step 8 is the post-scan image processing. So once we have that electronic image, there's gonna be this next step of processing it to get it ready for the final deliverable. And that includes quality assurance checks. It may include cropping or framing the actual records from the film. So if you have that aperture where the film is, that small piece of the larger card, that's the frame itself, but the actual record may be smaller, like a book within a frame. You may not want that border of the microfilm around the final image. That would be called cropping or framing to the image rather than the frame. So that may be part of your post-scan image processing. We may be applying OCR for text search accessibility, and there may be one of many other things such as rotating images or flipping them or things of that sort. That's all part of the post-scan image processing step. The next step, step number 9, is indexing. So depending on how your Aperture cards are processed and what you're looking for, they'll be indexed in a couple different ways. The most common step is on that actual card, the physical card, there's a title block. That is the most common way to index Aperture cards. That's gonna say what that record is. So the simplest thing to do is capture the information that's on that title block and turn that into the digital file name. You may want something different, such as the information from the actual image. Let's say you have engineering drawings, and instead of the information that's on the Aperture card, the physical card, you want the title block information from the drawing itself. So instead of capturing the information from the top of that card, once we scan the image and create that digital file, we need to go into that image and capture information from there. That's a little more difficult. It's typically more expensive because it's not as easily identifiable depending on the records. You also may have to do that if there just isn't information on the physical card itself anyway. That does happen where there's no information, we need to go to the image. There is another way to index Aperture cards, and it's basically a different type of card, which is called holograph. And these are Aperture cards with little punch holes in them that actually indicate what the information on that card is going to be. So the punches relate to a file name. So we do have scanners that we can scan those cards, capture the holograph information, which then spits out the file name. The thing with reading holograph is it really just reads it properly or it doesn't. So there's an issue, or it may not read at all. And that issue would mean you're using a holograph scanner, you're not capturing the physical card image. So you only have the microfilm image. So if that holograph doesn't read, you have to go to the image itself to then get index information, which, as I mentioned before, could be a little more expensive if you have to go that step. And lastly, we have delivery, which is you actually getting your digital images. There are a couple ways for that. You may be getting a USB drive. We may be transferring it to you by an FTP, or what's called a file transfer protocol, so an electronic delivery. Or you may be accessing our digital reel application to use your Aperture cards, which if that's the case, once we load them up there, you just log in, you're accessing your cards right away, and you're done. Whichever those methods it is, that's the final step, is getting your Aperture card images back to you so you can finally use the digital files. And that wraps it up. That's our 10-step process for digitizing Aperture cards. Hope you got some information out of this. And if you want to keep getting more videos like this, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.